All right, let's dive right into this. We like to think of ourselves, especially if we're smart, if we're successful, as these really rational beings, making cool, logical choices. But what if that confidence is, well, misplaced? What if our intelligence doesn't protect us from error, but actually gives us better, more sophisticated tools to justify our own irrational decisions?
Here's the fascinating part. When we do act irrationally, it's not just random chaos. It's not a bug in our system, it's a feature. There's a pattern to it, a repeatable, predictable system to our mistakes. And maybe the biggest mistake of all is believing that our smarts put us above that pattern.
And this brings up a huge question, right? If we're so prone to these mental glitches, why are we so convinced that when the stakes get high, with big money and tough competition, we'll suddenly become perfectly rational? We just assume the experts are immune, but these cognitive traps, they get all of us.
Okay, let's look at our first piece of evidence, a phenomenon called anchoring. This shows how even the sharpest, most analytical minds can be swayed by information that has absolutely nothing to do with the choice at hand. Something as random as a number you just wrote down.
So get this experiment they did with a group of really bright MIT grad students. They were asked to do 3 simple things. First, just write down the last 2 digits of your social security number. Then, they're shown a nice bottle of wine and asked, hey, would you pay that dollar amount for this? And finally, they placed a real, actual bid on it. So what happened? Well, the results are kind of shocking. The students with higher social security numbers, like in the 80s or 90s, they bid, on average, 346% more than the students with lower numbers. I mean, these are brilliant analytical people, yet a completely arbitrary number, one they knew was random, latched onto their brains and set the price. This is a perfect illustration of a cognitive bias called anchoring. The very first number we see just tethers our brain to a certain spot. It just goes to show that our confident feeling about what something is worth can be completely manufactured out of thin air, and we don't even notice it happening.
But it's not just random numbers that are pulling our strings. The entire context of a decision can flip a switch in our brain. It turns out we're basically living in 2 different worlds all the time, each with its own rule book, and we think we can just logically jump between them. Spoilers, we can't.
Think about it. In the world of social norms, you help a buddy move his couch for some pizza and beer. You're not going to send him an invoice, right? But in the world of market norms, you hire professional movers and you expect them to be efficient. Things get really, really weird when we mix these 2 worlds up. In fact, research shows that just thinking about money, we're talking even just unscrambling sentences with words like salary, is enough to boot us out of that warm, fuzzy social world and drop us right into the cold, calculated market world. Our rational brain gets completely bypassed by this subconscious trigger.
All right, let's look at another powerful bias that totally warps our thinking. The way we value stuff changes drastically the second we call it mine. And you know who falls for this one the hardest? Smart investors, savvy negotiators, people who are completely convinced their valuation is objective, not emotional.
Okay, picture the absolute chaos around tickets for a massive Duke basketball game. A lottery instantly split the diehard student fans into 2 groups, the lucky ones who won a ticket and the ones who didn't. A moment before, they were all the same, but now one group were owners and the other were not.
The difference in what they thought that ticket was worth is it's astounding. The students who didn't get a ticket, they offered about $175 for one. But the owners, they wouldn't dream of selling for less than an average of $2,400. That's 14 times higher. The simple fact of owning it created this powerful emotional value that just steamrolled any kind of rational calculation.
So our financial decisions are clearly getting nudged around by these irrational forces. But surely our moral compass is more stable, right? Smart people especially tend to have a lot of trust in their own integrity. Well, let's see about that. First, here's a big number. We can all agree on this one. This is the cost of robbery, a crime we all universally condemn as dishonest. It's a big, clear-cut, bad thing. But the much, much larger cost to society often comes from a totally different place. It comes from millions of tiny, seemingly minor, dishonest acts. Padding an expense report, taking some pens from the office, rounding up your billable hours. All the little things we are experts at rationalizing away. In one experiment, people were given a simple math test with a clear opportunity to cheat. The group that could cheat easily claimed they solved about 5.5 problems, compared to 3 for the control group. So yeah, they cheated, but just by a little bit. Now here's the kicker. A third group, who first had to recall the 10 commandments, showed no cheating at all.
Zero. So this all points to a fascinating idea called the fudge factor theory. And this is where being smart can actually be a trap. Why? Because the smarter we are, the better we are at telling ourselves a really convincing story. We build these elegant, sophisticated justifications for our little cheats, which lets our personal fudge factor get bigger without ever making us feel like a bad person.
All of these examples, from anchoring on random numbers, to the crazy price of ownership, to our very flexible morality, they all point to one single powerful conclusion about our confidence.
The irrationality we all share, it's not a chaotic mess. It's not some personal failing. It follows these predictable patterns, and no amount of intelligence or education can make you immune. In fact, being blissfully unaware of these patterns, well, that's the very definition of the confidence trap.
And that's the whole point, really. This isn't about feeling bad about our flawed brains. It's about empowerment. See, real wisdom isn't being free of bias, it's having the humility to know it's there. By understanding how our minds tend to trip up, we can start to second-guess our assumptions and hopefully make much smarter decisions.
So the next time you feel totally 100% certain about a choice or a price or your own flawless judgment, it's worth just pausing for a second to ask yourself this one simple, powerful question. That little moment of doubt, it might be the most rational thought you have all day.